My 2.5-year-old female camel is pregnant, but there are no male camels at home. The villagers came to watch the fun. Only my grandfather has a gloomy face. Chen Wang smiled and asked his uncle, "How did this female camel get pregnant?" My grandfather just frowned, and the seeds in the town were matched. Just as my grandfather finished speaking, the mother camel gave me a sideways glance. Chen Wang also wants to buy my family's camels. Do you want to sell these to small camels at home? I want to buy one to kill and eat during the Chinese New Year. I haven't eaten camel meat yet. My grandfather frowned. Camel meat tastes bad. You'd better buy a fat pig to slaughter. My grandma got anxious on the side. You haven't even eaten camel meat and are talking nonsense, sir. My grandmother smiled and looked at Chen Wang, saying, "It depends on what price you can offer to sell the little camel." Chen Wang stretched out 3 fingers at most. I just want to taste the taste of camel. If you don't sell at this time, then I won't buy it. My grandma saw that Chen Wang didn't want to buy any more, so he hurriedly said, "Sell, sell. We are all from the same village, so I will sell it cheaply. You can choose for yourself." But as soon as my grandmother finished speaking, the mother camel protected the 2 young camels behind her. Her 2 hooves kept stepping on the ground, and her mouth made a humming sound, as if warning Chen Wang. Chen Wang pointed to the camel, and I wanted the small female camel. I saw that Chen Wang had already chosen the camel. My grandma asked my grandpa to drive the female camel out. My grandfather frowned. He first glanced at the female camel, then at Chen Wang. "Wangzi, the camel cub is too small. If you catch the camel cub now, it won't live for more than 3 days. Why don't you put the camel cub in my house first? On the day of the Chinese New Year, you can catch and kill the camel cubs, and you can still eat fresh meat. There are less than 10 days left until the Chinese New Year." Chen Wang looked at the camel and swallowed his saliva. "Uncle, you don't understand this, do you? Newborn camel cubs have crispy bones, and the taste is incredibly delicious." My grandmother saw that my grandfather was unwilling. "Old man, quickly drive the camel out. Don't let Wangzi wait anxiously." My grandfather frowned and walked into the camel pen just as he entered the pen. The mother camel rushed towards my grandfather, but he didn't have time to dodge and was knocked down by the mother camel. The mother camel also stepped on my grandfather's stomach with her hooves. My grandma saw my grandpa being bullied by a camel and roared, "Animal, watch me beat you to death." As she spoke, my grandmother entered the circle with a whip in her hand and used it to beat the female camel. The villagers also helped, and it took a lot of effort to drive the female camel into the corner. My grandfather got up from the ground, gasping for breath. "The ungrateful thing will kill you sooner or later." The female camel made a piercing sound, and the little female camel next to him was pulled out. Chen Wang walked up to the little female camel and touched its head with his hand. "This camel looks delicious, and I want to roast it over fire to eat." After Chen Wang finished speaking, he looked at my grandfather and uncle again. "Can you kill the camel cubs at your house and let everyone taste the camel meat?" As soon as Chen Wang finished speaking, the female camel let out a piercing cry, staring at Chen Wang as if she wanted to kill him. My grandpa hesitated for a few seconds and didn't say anything. Instead, my grandma smiled and said, "Okay, everyone should try it." After he finished speaking, he went to the warehouse to get a knife and rope. Several young men tied up the camel cub and pressed it to the ground. The camel let out a desperate and piercing cry, his eyes fixed on me. As soon as Chen Wang saw the knife in his hand, he killed the camel cub with one stroke. The villagers set up a fire in the courtyard and roasted the camel cubs on it, making a sizzling sound. The villagers are very happy. After all, our village is very poor, and we can't eat meat all year round. Only my grandfather walked to the side of the fence and said to the female camel inside the fence, "Don't hold a grudge." After my grandfather finished speaking, he also threw hay into the fence. The mother camel made a wheezing sound from her mouth, lowered her head to eat hay, but her eyes kept staring at the villagers. In the evening, the camel meat was cooked, and the villagers gathered around to eat it. After eating the meat, everyone in the village dispersed, leaving only the three of us in the courtyard. My grandma happily counted the money, and he smiled and said he would go to town tomorrow to catch the fat pigs. After my grandmother finished speaking, she looked at the small male camel in the fence. He smiled and said, "Old man, we won't sell the remaining male camel. When it grows up, we'll mate with the female camel. We sell camels, we will definitely make money." My grandfather seemed not to have heard my grandmother speak. He sat on the bench smoking, and I don't know what he was thinking. I heard the piercing sound of camels late at night, which woke up my grandpa and grandma. Several of us hurriedly got off the earthen bed and ran to the courtyard. I saw the mother camel biting the skull of the baby camel in her mouth, and she killed the baby camel. I was so angry that I stomped my feet. He cursed at the animal, saying, "I'll feed you, and feed you. I'll eat one of your cubs, but you still got angry. Watch me beat you to death." My grandmother raised the whip and hit the female camel. The female camel took a few lashes and ran to the corner to hide. My grandpa grabbed my grandma. "All right, let's tidy up the camel cubs first and sell them in town tomorrow." After my grandfather finished speaking, he went into the fence, pulled out the camel cub, and used a knife to divide the camel into several large pieces of meat. My grandmother said fiercely that this beast cannot be raised. "Look at his eyes. He holds a grudge against us. Maybe one day it will kill us. In my opinion, we should sell the female camel." My grandfather frowned. "Tomorrow, I will bring the female camel to the town to sell." My grandmother said she would go with me. After saying this, my grandmother threw a lot of hay into the fence. He said to eat more and sell it at a good price tomorrow. The mother camel gave my milk a sideways glance, then lowered her head to eat hay. The next morning, the female camel in my yard unexpectedly gained 70 to 80 catties. He ate all the hay I gave him last night. My grandfather wants to sell the female camel, but my grandmother hesitated. He said to the old man, "Don't rush to sell it. Let's raise it later. I think this female camel is more resistant to gaining weight." My grandfather said okay. After saying this, he drove a donkey cart out to the town to sell camel meat. There are only me and my grandmother left at home. My grandmother said, "You stay at home and watch the female camel. I'll go to the mountain to pick up hay." I nodded. "Got it." My grandmother went out with a sickle and a bamboo basket on her back. There are only me, the female camel, and fat pigs left in the yard. After my grandmother left, the mother camel's eyes kept staring at my grandmother's back until my grandmother disappeared completely, and then the mother camel turned her gaze back. At noon, the weather was a bit hot, so I poured water into the sink. The female camel came over to drink water, and I squatted next to the fence to watch the female camel drink water. Suddenly, the female camel jumped out of the fence. It is very tall and large, weighing 600 to 700 catties, and the distance between us is only half a meter. He stared at me, and if he rushed towards me, he could bite my skull in one bite. I sat paralyzed on the ground, not even daring to breathe, afraid of angering the female camel. The mother camel walked up to me, sniffed with her nose, and probably thought I wasn't a threat, so she turned around and ran out of the yard. The mother camel ran very fast, and by the time I got up from the ground, she had already disappeared. I can only run towards the back mountain to find my grandma. I ran as hard as I could, halfway up the mountain, and finally found my grandma. My grandmother was very unhappy to see me. She asked with a straight face who let you run out. "Didn't I ask you to watch the mother camel?" I said the mother camel ran away, and as soon as I finished speaking, my grandma slapped me, and he yelled, "Where did you go?" I was standing by the beating, crying, and saying I didn't know. My grandma slapped me several times in a row, scolding me as a waste. What's the use of raising you? My grandmother carried a sickle and a bamboo basket and ran down the mountain. When we arrived at the village entrance, my grandma started shouting that my mother camel had run away and asked everyone to help find it. The villagers helped find the female camel, but even when it was dark, they couldn't find the female camel. No way, my grandma can only lead me home first. As soon as I entered the house, I saw the female camel eating hay in the fence. Her belly was very big and she had gained at least 100 catties. My grandma widened her eyes. You said the mother camel ran away. Why is it in the fence? Are you lying? I shook my head frantically. I didn't lie. He really ran away during the day. My grandmother walked to the fence and looked carefully at the female camel. The female camel had gained weight again. As soon as my grandma finished speaking, the mother camel looked up at my grandma. Her gaze towards my grandma was strange and eerie. I saw that the corners of the mother camel's mouth seemed to be stained with blood. And suddenly my grandfather came back in a donkey cart. The old woman had an accident. Chen Wang died. My grandma was stunned for a few seconds. How did she die? My grandfather said that he was bitten to death. His neck was bitten off. Let's go take a look quickly. As soon as my grandfather finished speaking, I saw the female camel steal a glance at me. He seemed to be smiling with a look of pride in his eyes. My grandma said, "You stay at home and watch the female camel. Your grandpa and I will be back soon." After my grandmother finished speaking, she went out with my grandfather, leaving me alone in the courtyard. I don't know when, but the mother camel's gaze has already fallen on me. He stared at me, making me feel uneasy. I was afraid he would jump out of the fence, so I quickly ran into the east room and locked the door. I climbed onto the earthen bed and looked at the mother camel through the window. He was still staring at me when it suddenly snowed heavily outside the window, very cold. The mother camel stood in the fence. The gate was closed, and he couldn't go back to the nest. The snow is getting heavier and heavier. I'm afraid the female camel will freeze to death. The mother camel is still staring at me, and her gaze towards me is complicated, with an indescribable feeling. This female camel seems to have been raised in my family for many years, and I have had an impression of it since I was very young. I got off the earthen bed and ran to the fence. The mother camel was covered with a thick layer of snow, almost up to her knees. I looked at the mother camel and said, "I'll open the door. You go into the nest to hide from the snow. You can't bite me." The mother camel still stared at me. Her front hooves moved, and she made a whimpering sound from her mouth. He was about to freeze to death, so I opened the fence, went into the fence, and opened the door again. The mother camel glanced at me, walked up to me, and suddenly licked my head, which startled me. The mother camel's eyes narrowed like a human, and he entered the nest. I locked the door of the nest and ran back to the east room. Late at night, my grandmother came back in the heavy snow, and both of them were covered in thick snow. My grandma's expression was serious. "Old man, do you think what Mrs. Chen said is credible? Has said he saw the female camel bite Wangzi to death with his own eyes." My grandfather sat on the earth bed, lit a dry cigarette, took 2 puffs in a row, and then spoke. "Mrs. Chen is old, her eyesight is blurred, and she is not trustworthy." My grandma said, "But our mother camel really ran out today." My grandfather shook his head. "Can't." My grandma snorted coldly, and he said angrily, "You are protecting the female camel. Liu Daquin, I can tell you that you are a human being, not an animal." As soon as my grandmother finished speaking, my grandfather became anxious. He widened his eyes and shouted at my grandmother, "What are you talking about? If you keep talking nonsense, I'll beat you to death." My grandma pursed her lips and said coldly, "Liu Daquin, I've spent half my life with you. What kind of person are you?" "Others don't know, but I do." I have always turned a blind eye and saved face for you. Don't push me too hard. What happened to those camel cubs? As soon as you finished speaking, my grandfather's face changed. He got up and went outside, where it was snowing heavily. I saw my grandfather enter the fence and enter the mother camel's den. My grandma was so angry that she kept shouting that she would sell the mother camel tomorrow. The next morning, the snow stopped and my grandfather came out of the camel den. It's covered in weeds and the fur on the camel's body. My grandma glared at me fiercely. He loudly said to sell the female camel. My grandfather narrowed his eyes. He said to my grandmother, "Look carefully at the belly of the female camel. His belly has grown again. It won't take long to give birth to baby camels. It's a pity to sell now." My grandma snorted coldly. "This female camel is evil. Cannot raise you, Dogwin. Don't be blinded by the mother camel." My grandfather looked at my grandmother with a gloomy face. Didn't speak for half a day. My grandma angrily said she sold it. My grandfather said no with a cold face. "If you dare to sell the female camel, I'll kill you." My grandfather looks very scary when he is angry. He disagrees with selling female camels. I dare not say anything. The mother camel stands in the fence. He looked at my grandfather with a complicated expression. He made a whimpering sound towards my grandfather, still stepping on the ground with two front hooves. My grandfather walked to the fence. Opened the fence. The mother camel emerged from the fence. He walked slowly in the courtyard. My grandma is so angry, but I can only grit my teeth and leave Dogwin. You will be killed by a female camel sooner or later. My grandpa coolly snorted. No need for you to care. As soon as my grandfather finished speaking, the mother camel walked up to my grandfather. Very obedient to my grandfather, my grandpa feeds it hay. I'm so angry that my teeth itch. He said, "Animal, I will kill you sooner or later." My grandma just finished speaking. My yard gate is open. A beggar walked in. This beggar has messy hair, still holding a begging bowl. My grandma has a sullen face and smells like a beggar. Get out quickly. The bowl in the beggar's hand suddenly fell to the ground and broke. The beggar suddenly burst into tears. He knelt on the ground and shouted, "Parents, I am a pillar." My grandpa and my grandma were stunned, stared with wide eyes. They ran to the beggar in a few seconds. The beggar's hair is very long. It covered his face. My grandfather reached out and parted the beggar's hair, showed the beggar's face. It is indeed my uncle. My uncle has a few more scars on his face. It looks like it was cut with a knife. Shocking. My uncle let out a painful wail. He cried and said his parents, "I'm back." My uncle just finished speaking. I saw my mother camel staring at my uncle. He looked at my uncle with calculation in his eyes. My mother camel has been raised for 3 years. It was because of my uncle at first. Just raised this female camel. My grandmother hurriedly hugged my younger uncle, crying and saying, "Pillar, why did you just come back? Where have you been for the past 3 years?" My uncle cried and said, "I was caught by a group of people. Broke a leg, almost got killed. Thanks to me for running out." My grandfather's eyes turned red. He said, "Come inside quickly. It's cold outside." My grandfather carried my uncle on his back. Fly into the east room. My mother camel has been staring at my uncle. He looked at my uncle with a complicated expression. He walked slowly to the window of the east room. Look at my uncle through the window. My grandmother glared fiercely at the mother camel. He drew the curtains. Don't let the female camel see my uncle. My grandma brought clean water to wash my uncle's face. Cut my uncle's hair again. My uncle sat on the earth bed crying. He has many injuries on his body, large and small scars. My grandfather frowned. You have suffered. My uncle cried and said, I thought I was going to die outside. Didn't expect to come back alive. What about Chantao people? Chantao is my aunt's name. Married into my family 3 years ago. My grandpa and my grandma were stunned. They exchanged a glance. The eyes seemed to be communicating something. My grandfather said you disappeared for the 2nd year. Chantao ran away. My uncle frowned and his parents. Why don't you keep an eye on him? I look like this now. Where to find a wife? My grandfather said pillar. Don't worry, your family will definitely give you a wife. My grandma said I will go find Mrs. Chen for help tomorrow. Let him introduce you to the girl. My uncle nodded. He recounted all his experiences over the past few years. I didn't sleep until late at night. The next morning, my grandpa and grandma have gone out. Only my uncle and I are left at home. My uncle is sitting on a bench sunbathing. The female camel in my fence stared at my uncle. The mouth also made a wheezing sound. My uncle was attracted by the call of the female camel. He walked to the fence. A close look at the mother camel. The mother camel makes a sound from its mouth. This sound is very strange. My uncle reached out and touched the neck of the female camel. The female camel also licked my uncle's hand. My uncle widened his eyes in an instant. The eyes were full of shock. He purposely coughed a few times, then went into the fence. The female camel approached my uncle. Put your head on my uncle's shoulder. My uncle was stunned for a few seconds. He turned his head and said to me, Shaoshanzi, go to Laoli's house and buy Tilyongaport. I'm hungry for meat. I said I have no money in my hands. My uncle let me owe it first. Let my grandfather repay the money then. I nodded. Come back after buying pork. As soon as I entered the hospital, I heard the sound of a female camel. The mother camel's call is very low. The mother camel is in the nest. The door of the nest is locked. I looked around. Where did my uncle go? I called out uncle. No response. I called out uncle again. I bought the meat back. As soon as I finished speaking, I heard my uncle's voice coming from the camel den. Got it? Put the meat in the barn. As soon as I finished speaking, the door to the camel's den opens. My uncle came out from inside with a red face, with a smile on his face. Looks like a good mood. After my uncle came out, the female camel also came out of the nest. It eats grass in the fence. Mouth has been chewing. Eyes half open, like looking at my uncle. My uncle touched the neck of the female camel. Then he smiled and said to me, Shaoshanzi, wait for your milk to come back. Stew the meat. Eat meat at night. I nodded. Got it? I'm playing in the yard. My uncle is staying in the fence. He also whispered in the mother camel's ear. I don't know what he's talking about. Wait until my grandpa and grandma come back in the evening. My grandma said with a smile, Pillar, your father and I went to Shanna village. There is a girl named Ding Xiang in Shanna village, 10 years younger than you. Be beautiful. Tomorrow they will come for a blind date. You need to prepare well. This can work. My grandfather also smiled. He smiled and said that the girl's head was also high. You will definitely like it. My uncle frowned. He turned his head and glanced at the female camel in the fence. Then say mother to my grandma. My grandfather is not in a hurry to go on blind dates. It's okay to wait a little longer. My uncle just finished speaking. My grandma's face changed. He shouted loudly, What are you talking about? Marriage is a big deal. Can't wait for my grandpa to say pillar. Get married early. Your mother and I will be relieved. My uncle frowned. He said okay. My uncle just finished speaking. The female camel in the fence let out a humming sound. He seems to be expressing dissatisfaction. My uncle glanced at the female camel. He turned his head nervously. My grandmother also glanced at the mother camel. He said the old man sold the female camel at home, just enough for a pillar to marry a wife. My grandma just finished speaking. My grandfather snorted coldly. He said no. Female camels cannot be sold. After saying this, my grandfather went into the east room. My grandma is so angry. He told my uncle that your father is confused, blinded by a female camel. My grandmother finished speaking and whispered about the pillar. In my opinion, kill the female camel. You killed the female camel while it was dark. My uncle widened his eyes. He said the mother killed the mother camel. What are you doing? My grandma glanced at the mother camel. The mother camel is eating hay with her head down. My grandma is sure the mother camel didn't look at him. He just spoke up and said that this female camel has strong evil tendencies. The waves were bitten to death by it. Can't support. My uncle frowned. He whispered, Mother, you're overthinking it. How evil can a female camel be? My grandma said you don't understand. Just do as I say. While it gets dark, you go into the camel den and kill the mother camel. My uncle got up, reluctantly said I won't do this. After my uncle finished speaking, he went into the Westing house. I stomped my feet in anger. The female camel in the fence is staring at my milk. He looked at my grandmother with sarcasm in his eyes. I angrily threw the bamboo basket to the ground, then turned around and went into the east room. Late at night, I heard the sound of a female camel coming from the courtyard. I sat up, climbed to the window. I saw my uncle enter the camel den. My uncle still had a strange smile on his face. It's so late. What is uncle doing in the camel den? Just when I was confused. My grandpa and grandma are awake. My grandma is so angry. He said, Animal Lee Dockwin, look at what you've done. The pillar was destroyed by you. My grandfather frowned. He put on a piece of clothing and got off the earthen bed. My grandmother and I also went out. My grandfather opened the door to the camel's nest, pulled my uncle out. My uncle looked at my grandpa with anger. He said, Dad, what are you doing? My grandpa said, What are you going to do? My uncle snorted a few times. He said, It's none of your business. My grandmother has a gloomy face. He raised the whip to hit the female camel, but I was stopped by my uncle. My uncle stood in front of the female camel. What are you going to do? My grandma said, Pillar. Don't be blinded by the mother camel. He is very evil. My uncle said he's not evil. I think it's your evil nature. My uncle just finished speaking. My grandfather and grandmother exchanged a glance. My grandfather said, Pillar, you obediently go back to the west room to sleep. Your mother doesn't hit female camels anymore. My uncle pursed his lips. He doesn't believe what my grandfather said. He led the female camel directly into his house and unlocked the door. When the mother camel passed by my grandfather, I also glanced at my grandfather. There is a strange look in the eyes, like human eyes. My grandfather frowned. He stood still for a long time. My grandmother hammered my grandfather's shoulder with her hand. He cried and said it was all your fault. This female camel should be killed. My grandpa said don't be in a hurry. When the pillar gets married, nature doesn't want female camels. My grandma is in a hurry. He shouted loudly, Do you want to kill the female camel or not? My grandfather sighed, said to wait for Juicy to marry his wife. I'll sell the mother camel. Listen to what my grandfather said. My grandma just agreed. Noon the next, Mrs. Chen brought clothes, and Ding Xiang's parents came to my house. Lilacs are very beautiful, but my uncle has no reaction to clothes. He has always been expressionless. The eyes kept looking into the fence. Look at the female camel in the fence. Ding Xiang is honest and down to earth. Keep your head down. My grandfather gave a high dowry. Ding Xiang's parents agreed to this marriage. The date is set for 3 days later. After the Ding Xiang family left, my uncle turned around and went into the fence, sitting next to the mother camel. He also whispers to the female camel from time to time, "My grandmother has a gloomy face." He said the lilac girl is good. Do you like it? My uncle touched the head of the female camel. He smiled and said I didn't like it, but the mother camel took a liking to it. My uncle just finished speaking. My grandma threw away the bamboo basket in her hand. My grandma said, "I think you're crazy, just like your dad." My uncle doesn't seem to have heard my grandma talking. Continued to whisper to the female camel. My grandfather sighed. He said, "Pillar, you are about to start a family. You can't hang out with the mother camel every day." My uncle glared at me fiercely. He said, "Don't think I don't know you. What have you done?" The mother camel told me. "Be careful." My uncle said this. He touched the head of the female camel again. The mother camel suddenly fell to the ground, lying next to my uncle, but his eyes were fixed on my grandfather. He looked at my grandfather strangely, like very proud. My grandfather's gaze towards the female camel was filled with viciousness. It's like making up your mind to kill a female camel. 3 days have passed in a blink of an eye. My family held a wedding banquet. Lilac entered the door. The first night that Lilac entered the door, my uncle ran to the camel den to sleep. Dingxiang ran to the east room crying. Tell my grandpa and grandma about this. My grandpa and grandma are angry to death. My grandfather even carried a kitchen knife out of the house. Pull my uncle out of the camel den. He said to my uncle, "If you dare to sleep in a camel's nest again, I killed the mother camel." My uncle said fiercely that you dare. If you dare to kill a female camel, I'll chop you to death. My grandfather is annoyed by my younger uncle. He raised his kitchen knife to chop the female camel. My uncle stopped my grandfather. They wrestled on the ground. My grandma and Aunt Harrietly went to fight. Neither of them let go, continued to struggle together. The female camel in the fence looked at my uncle sideways. And my grandfather. He seems to be laughing. My uncle the kitchen knife from my grandfather's hand. He shouted loudly that anyone who dared to kill the female camel, I'll kill him. My uncle finished speaking, turned around and entered the camel den, and locked the door to the camel's den. My aunt stood there crying. My grandpa said, "Dingxiang, don't cry. Go back to the room first. Your mother and I will find a way." My aunt nodded, ran into Westinghouse crying. My grandfather approached my grandmother. Andy said to trick the pillar out tomorrow, then kill the mother camel. My grandma said to film. My grandfather said to worship ancestors on the mountain. My grandma nodded. The next morning, it's still dark outside. My grandfather took my uncle and aunt with him, and my grandma went out. I am the only one left at home. I'm sitting on the bench playing. After a while, my grandfather ran back in a hurry. My grandfather quickly opened the fence. Bring out the female camel inside. My grandfather told the mother camel to leave quickly. If you don't leave, you have to stay alive. The mother camel gave my grandfather a sideways glance. It made a whimpering sound from its mouth. I don't know what it wants to say. My grandfather drove the female camel out of the hospital. It led the female camel towards the village entrance. The mother camel walks very slowly. It only took a few steps and then turned around to take a look. I don't know what it's looking at. Wait until night. My uncle brought the female camel back. The mother camel's mouth was also stained with blood. His gaze towards my uncle was eerie. My uncle opened the fence door. The mother camel was led in. My uncle touched the neck of the female camel. He smiled and asked if he was full. The mother camel's mouth moved, making a whimpering sound in the mouth. My uncle seems to understand the mother camel's words. A smile instantly appeared on his face. I said, "Uncle, why haven't my grandpa and grandma come back yet?" My uncle turned his head and glanced at me. He said angrily, "How would I know?" After my uncle finished speaking, he led the female camel into the nest. and closed the door. After a while, I heard the sound of a female camel. That sound is very strange. I ran to the gate to play. By the moonlight, I saw the figures. The two of them walked quickly. I took a closer look. It's my grandma and my aunt. My grandmother has a gloomy face. The complexion looks bad. I said, "Milk, my grandpa. Where are you?" I just finished speaking. My grandma gave me a fierce glare. I'm very puzzled why my grandma is staring at me. A few of us went into the hospital. My grandmother whispered that you don't need to worry about the lilac pillar for now. Let's go back to my parents' home tomorrow. My aunt was stunned for a few seconds. He said, "Mother, why? Didn't you and Dad promise me to kill the female camel?" When my aunt said this, tears can't stop falling. My grandma covered me with her hand and mouth. He glanced at the camel den in the fence from the corner of his eye. Make sure my uncle didn't come out. He whispered about clothes. You listen to me. Leave tomorrow. We can't let Juicy know about this yet. My aunt frowned. After hesitating for a few seconds, he nodded. My grandma pulled me into the east room. Closed the door to the east room. The moment the door closes, my grandma's tears couldn't stop falling. He began to pack his things, clean up all the valuable things in the house. I said, "What are you doing?" As soon as I finished speaking, I heard banging on the door. The knocking sound is loud. It's like smashing a hole in the door. My uncle's voice came from outside the door. "Open the door. If you don't open the door, I'll smash it." I had no choice but to open the door. The moment the door opened, smell a bloody smell. My uncle came into the house with a gloomy face. He stared at my grandma and said, "Mother, what do you mean by advising Ding Xiang to go back to her parents' home?" My grandma laughed twice. He said, according to the village rules, the new wife needs to visit her parents. Ding Xiang has been married for 3 days. My uncle snorted coldly. He also looked up and down at my grandma. My uncle said, "Mother, you are smarter than my father. Don't do anything stupid." My uncle left after saying this. Only my grandmother and I are left in the room. My grandma was sitting on the earth bed. My grandma whispered about the old man. "It's all your fault." The next morning, the female camel in my fence has gained weight again. Round belly. There is fresh blood on the corner of the mother camel's mouth. My uncle really likes female camels. He has been accompanying the female camel in the fence since my aunt went back to her parents' home. She never came back. My uncle even brought the female camel directly into the house to raise. A few months have passed in the blink of an eye. My mother camel has grown a lot, at least 800 to 900 catties. The mother camel has a big belly. He also gave birth to 2 camel cubs. The villagers came to watch the fun. These 2 camel cubs are very strange. He is small in size and has black fur on his body. Born unable to walk for half a day. Can't even stand up. The villagers all think these 2 camel cubs are too weak. Can't live long. But my uncle is very happy. Raised 2 camel cubs like treasures. My uncle said the 2 camel cubs are too weak. Need to add some nutrition to the female camel. Since my uncle said that, our village is embarrassed every few days. No one knows where these people have gone. My grandmother's gaze towards my uncle also became strange. It's that kind of scared and fearful look. One night, I went to the toilet in the toilet. I heard a sound outside. It's my uncle's voice. My uncle said, "No, he is my mother," and the sound of a female camel. The mother camel's mouth made a wheezing sound. It sounds urgent. My uncle said to go to bed first. Let's talk about it tomorrow. My uncle finished speaking. He pulled the female camel into the nest and closed the door. Make sure my uncle is not here. I just came out of the toilet. I returned to the east room. My grandmother sat on the earth bed with a worried face. Visible aging. since my grandfather disappeared. My grandma is like this. I said, Mother, I just heard my uncle talking to the female camel. What did my grandma say? I said I heard. My uncle said no. He is my mother. As soon as I finished speaking, my grandma widened her eyes. He hurriedly got off the earthen con. He took my hand. Whisper Shaoshanzi. Be obedient and don't make a sound. While it gets dark, I'll take you away. My grandmother finished speaking. Just turn off the lights in the room. Until late at night, my grandma carries valuable things with her. He carried me away. Just pushed open the door. I saw my uncle standing at the door. There is still a female camel standing behind. The mother camel stared at my milk tightly. There is pride and deceit in the eyes. The mother camel's mouth is still moving. The voice of someone chewing on my milk is trembling. He said, Pillar, I am your mother. My grandma just finished speaking. I heard the mother camel making a wheezing sound. The female camel is very big and tall. He can crush a person's skull in one bite. My uncle said, I know. Mother, don't go out at night. Go to bed early. After my uncle finished speaking, he led the female camel into the east room. My grandma's face turned ugly. He can only lie on the earth bed. My grandfather can only lie on the earth bed. I'm very tired. Lying on the earth bed, I fell asleep in a daze. Half asleep and half awake. I heard the sound of chewing. Like eating. I want to open my eyes, but I can't. The next morning, my milk is gone. I asked my uncle where my grandmother is. My uncle didn't tell me either. Since my milk disappeared, my uncle is even more reckless in raising female camels. The female camel is getting bigger and bigger. One day I heard a scream coming from the camel's nest. My uncle was bitten to death by a female camel. The mother camel bit her skull to death. After the mother camel bit my uncle to death, he also killed those two young camels. It jumped out of the fence and glanced at me, then disappeared into the darkness. Since then, I dare not look at camels again. I always feel like it's going to crush my skull.